That's why it was so surprising, honestly, Farha, that you're on OnlyFans, because when I watched your clips, you're an extremely bright woman, and you have really good takes, and you're able to talk about kind of the female perspective, in a way that really makes sense, and I think a lot of men can learn from. But then on the other hand, I think I sent you that text as well, is that you're on there, which is kind of a contradiction. Maybe at least that's how I perceive it. I could be incorrect. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Hey guys, welcome to the Emily and Todd podcast. Today we have a very special guest in studio. It's farhakhalidi. She has 1.7 million followers on TikTok and has had some recent viral clips from Fresh and Fit. Also has had a viral video with Destiny recently. She also is known for her OnlyFans account. Before we get started, please remember to like and comment on this video, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So Farha, thank you so much for joining us in studio.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much.
Can we start off with maybe you just telling us more about yourself and really what got you started in content creation?
Yeah, so I was home for a summer after my junior year of college at my parents' house, and my parents are like these incredibly strict Muslims, and when I'm home with them, I don't have a ton of liberty to like go outside and do as I please unless like a family member is with me, or if I'm with like an approved friend or something. So usually when I'm home for those months, I'm kind of just confined to like my parents' apartment. And so I was just so bored that it kind of just spiked my creativity a little bit. So I decided to make a YouTube channel kind of just in secret from them, and I would just like hide upstairs and just write goofy little scripts and satire videos and then just post them. And they didn't gain any traction at all. I probably had like 20 subscribers after 4 months of doing it, but I still did it like weekly just as a creative outlet. And then I went back to college in the fall for my senior year. I downloaded the TikTok app and I decided to just upload one of the videos as a TikTok, since it was a pretty short video. And then I took like a midterm, and then I came back to the video, saw that it had over 1 million views. So I was like, okay, nice. So I just uploaded all my stockpiled YouTube content onto there. And then at that point had about like 500,000 followers on TikTok just from uploading my YouTube videos. And then how I sort of pivoted into like the dating red pill content that I'm known for is I was chilling in my college apartment with my friend Lily, and we were really bored because the bars were closed. So we were like, let's just invite a guy over from Bumble. So she invited this random guy that she matched with over, and he thought we were all going to have a threesome. And instead we just started debating him on abortion. And he was this traditional religious Albanian guy, and we were just trying to see when he'd fold to say that sometimes abortion is like morally permissible. So we were asking him, what if, the girl is a minor? What if she's going to die going into labor for this baby? And he kept saying, no, it's still murder. And then we asked him, what if you had a girlfriend and you got another girl pregnant? What would you do? And he said, I'd tell her to go get an abortion. And my friend and I just thought that was so funny. And I was like, I need to recreate that for a TikTok. And so I recreated the scene with one of my male friends being like an off-screen voice. And it was a satire video, but it got, I think, like 60 million views in a week and just went just ultra viral because people thought it was like a real scenario. So after that, I just started rinsing and repeating with that format because people found it really compelling and engaging. And that's how I kind of, pivoted into the dating realm of TikTok.
So I have to ask, do your parents know about your social media now?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once you grow to a certain point, you can't keep it under wraps.
Yeah. What did they think about it? They've had discussions with you?
They have. My mom was very upset about it at first. And then I started monetizing it, and she became a bit less upset because now I can help out with my parents financially and stuff. Yeah. Now that they see that it's a viable option, it was more scary for her. Me as a college senior, just like embarrassing myself online and having like 20 followers. And she's like, you're just wrecking your digital footprint. But now that she's seen that I made it a career, it's, you know what I mean, less scary for her. Yeah.
Does your dad feel similarly?
I don't know if he really gets it, but my dad he's very supportive. Like he told me when I visited home a few weeks ago, like Bete, which is like Urdu for son. I don't know why he calls me that, but he's like, Bete, like I always wanted a life of glamour and I'm happy that you have one. So he doesn't understand like the nuances of social media, but he sees it as just a subsection of Hollywood. So he finds that cool, I think.
So you live in LA right now. Where did you move from?
I moved from Albany, New York. I went to college there. Yeah.
okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Not far from
Small
us
world.
here.
Yeah. These cities
Yeah.
are pretty identical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rochester's better for sure. I know, I've been to both. So talk to us about, kind of when you made that jump, what was that like for you as far as I need to move out to LA because that's kind of where everything is happening, or one of the cities that everything is happening. And why decide to maybe focus on TikTok more versus YouTube and, talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I had graduated college about last year or 2 years ago at this point with my bachelor's in English, and then I started working at a lobbying firm in Albany. And at that point, my TikTok was at over 1 million followers, and I was already like taking brand deals and financially supporting myself more through my TikTok career than with lobbying. And I realized I wanted to focus on it more. And I thought just having a community that understood what I was doing would be really helpful because, my friends in New York who have a 9 to 5, it's like every conversation is them just saying like, well, what if it doesn't work out? Or what are you going to do? Or like, I don't get it. So I was like, I know I get it. And I don't want to have every conversation being me trying to get people to understand it. Even with the OnlyFans stuff, it's such a culture shock seeing how normalized and understood it is in LA versus, even visiting my brother's town in Boulder and his friends reacting to it. And you know what I mean? Immediately being met with so much cynicism about it. So yeah, I primarily moved to LA for the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's a ton of assumptions made about OnlyFans. And I mean, I personally probably have some because I don't know that much about it other than what I hear about it on TikTok. And, there's some creators that I will follow that then I find out, that they have the OnlyFans link in their bio and they are driving traffic, from their TikTok to their page. But even then, like there's different levels is from what I understand. You can pretty much have a choice and control over what you post. And that can be anywhere from like non-nudity to nudity to like
Hardcore
almost porn. Yeah, exactly. So have you seen that spectrum too? And do you feel like when you're telling people about your OnlyFans, like do you feel like you have to tell them the level that you're doing? And do you have to justify it to them?
I never feel the need to justify it because if someone's going to judge me because they just assume if I do OnlyFans, I'm doing the most hardcore type of porn, I wouldn't want them to justify me because they find out I don't do that and give me a pat on the back. You know what I mean? Like I don't want their brownie points for being less of a quote unquote slut if they're going to slut shame girls for doing porn,
Right, because I mean, I hear it even from women. Like, I feel like I've seen that on TikTok where they'll say, well, I only sell feet pics. That's all I do. So they're like above, some of the other girls that do other things.
Yeah, I just find that obnoxious. It's like, who cares? Guys are fapping to it, whether you're just showing your toes or you're getting your back blown out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't understand having like a sense of moral superiority over the type of content you do if it's all sex work,
Right.
How did you decide? What was your decision-making process as far as saying, I want to go that route? As far as, an income stream?
My biggest impetus for creating an OnlyFans wasn't necessarily income because I was already making money kind of via TikTok brand sponsorships. I think it was more so my style of content on TikTok made me curious about OnlyFans because if you've seen my TikTok page, it focuses a lot on like double standards and dating and just like micro cheating and stuff like that. So some things I would always compare is guys watching porn and then girls doing OnlyFans. And I realized like the implication of me making videos like that is in a way I'm kind of encouraging girls to get on OnlyFans. And that's something that felt weird to me because I was like, I've actually never even been on OnlyFans. And it feels like bad faith advice if I'm encouraging like my high school female audience to think OnlyFans is just the same as going on Instagram and stuff. So I kind of created my OnlyFans as like a way to test my morals and see how do I actually feel about it. Do I think it's parallel to other types of sex work? Do I think it's exploitative? Do I think it's empowering? So I just genuinely was just curious about how I'd feel about it. Yeah.
How do you feel about it now? I'm really curious.
I've had the experience of both working with an agency and not working with an agency. And I've learned that working with an agency makes me feel disgusted, exploited, and it lowered my self-esteem a ton versus when I did it without the agency, bundled my own content and just used like my internal sense of what I want and don't want to do, then I was completely fine with it. Yeah.
Okay. So I know you're not comfortable talking about the amount of subscribers you have, but one of the questions I had honestly was, when it comes to emails and things of that nature, how do you keep up with everything?
I mean, I don't have a job, so I have more hours in the day than anyone else. I'm in a very privileged position. Yeah.
Okay. So that's even a possibility? Because, I would think even on the low end, like if there was 1,000 guys on there and they were all having questions to you, that would be almost impossible to...
I mean, a lot of messages are just harassment or it's people complaining and wanting to see more. So I definitely don't respond or engage with a ton of the messages I receive,
Okay.
A lot of it's more just sending out like mass messages and then upselling and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So did you start kind of with the agency and then decide that wasn't good for you? And I'm sure our audience as well would be really interested in hearing what the agency experience was like. Like, why was it so bad?
Yeah. I sadly can't talk about the agency experience. I'm not allowed to, but I started off without the agency for about 2 to 3 months, and it was super fun. I enjoyed it. I was obviously making a lot less because I didn't have a professional like bundling and pricing my content and strategizing for me, but I was way happier doing that. And then I started working with the agency, and they kind of take creative direction, and it was a really complicated situation because I actually was living with my agency. Like they had a OF house that I moved into, so I was never mentally...
I didn't even know that was a thing. Wow.
I didn't know that either.
So there would be, sorry to cut you off, but there would be essentially a whole group of women that would be staying like almost an influencer house.
Yeah, like a TikTok house.
Kind of, but just with a lot of porn being filmed all the time.
Wow.
Okay. But your content is not like that at all. So
no, so it was very dissociating for me because I didn't identify with the community in that house at all. And I was the only client who actually lived in-house with the CEOs as well, just because of monetary reasons, I guess. It just worked out. And yeah, it was not a smart idea to live. I don't think it's a good idea to live with agents, period, because you're never off the clock. And then specifically agents who are monetizing you and want to push you in the direction of your sexual boundaries. It's just a recipe for disaster. So that's a more unique agency experience. So I don't know how to project that into advice for a general audience, but yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Now, would they help handle some of the emails that were coming in and direct messages from people?
In terms of like upselling and like sending out mass messages, yes. In terms of like if someone's saying something specific to me, like asking me a question, or I get a lot of men coming into my DMs who want to just debate me and be like, no, the gender wage gap isn't real, then like I'm the one who responds to that, specific messages. But if it's just them being like, oh, do you have feed stuff, then you know what I mean? The agency can handle that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You've compared your OnlyFans to your Instagram, right? I thought I heard you say that either on one of your TikToks or one of your podcasts that you've been on.
I think Sneeko asked me if I feel like I've sold my soul by doing OnlyFans.
Okay.
And I said, I don't think there's much of a moral difference between being an Instagram model and then doing like more, OnlyFans type of work.
Okay. So if there's no significant difference, why are guys paying? What's the incentive for them versus just staying on your Instagram?
Instagram has more restrictions. So on OnlyFans, it opens up this idea that like there's no limit on what they can get, right? So maybe this girl will like, fuck herself with a toy and I'll be able to see it. Maybe this girl will have BJ videos and I'll be able to see it, right?
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, according to what you've said, it sounds like that you're never going to go down that route. You're just going to kind of keep it PG.
Yeah, I guess my point was I don't think there's necessarily a moral difference in terms of Instagram modeling versus just having an Instagram where you post photos of like you, your dog, hiking, all these things versus Instagram modeling where the intention is still like you're posting thirst traps for people to beat off to. I'm saying like I see it all kind of as porn is my point.
Okay.
I guess I don't know OnlyFans that well. Like before a guy signs up for it, like do they kind of know what kind of content they're signing up for?
I think it depends on the creator. Some people put it in their bio. Some people like to just have the mystery to get people in the door,
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of people do custom content, so they'll do like whatever the guy asks,
Do you find, are there like a lot of guys that are sometimes disappointed? Like if they sign up and it's not what they expect?
Yeah, but like I said, I lived in an OnlyFans house, and there were girls who do actual porn, and guys still complain, and they're like, "I paid $9.99 for this." Like the nature of of OnlyFans guys, a lot of the time is that they're going to try and neg you to try and get more, and tell you that they feel ripped off. Because at the end of the day, like I said, it's never going to replace a real sexual interaction. So it's like they're not going to be that satisfied, even if you send them like an orgy video or something, you know.
How do you feel about it on the whole? Do you feel like it's a net positive for society, and and also for men and for women? How do you think that affects them?
OnlyFans. I guess there's the consumer angle and the creator angle. From the consumer angle, I don't think it affects society any more than porn has, than eroticas have. Like, I think it was pretty much only rad femmes who were ever talking about the adverse effects that porn was having on women's self-esteem, dating standards, romantic standards. But then as soon as OnlyFans dropped, and then maybe some girl you went to high school with started making six figures, showing her tits online, now I feel like there's way more of a public uproar about how this is tearing apart the social fabric. But, when girls were kind of getting groomed into being cam girls or porn stars, I just don't feel like there was as much of a visceral reaction from men on that part. I don't know if you guys agree with that. So that's why it's hard for me to believe that it's disrupted society more than just like the rampant porn industry already has. The only material difference, I think, between the OnlyFans economy and then like the traditional porn economy is that now it's more accessible for the average girl to get into sex work. So prior, like the odds of a girl in your college class being a porn star were slim to none. And if she was, it was probably a news story, versus now the chances that like the cute girl you're trading notes with might be, like showing her pussy online could be way higher. And that could scare guys because then they think like, the dating pool is being morally depleted. But the way I see it is girls who are going into OnlyFans are such a small section of the population. And those are girls who I think otherwise still would have been either cam girls, Instagram modeling, or doing things that specific section of guys who deem that like morally reprehensible probably wouldn't want to date regardless. Like it seems like now it's easy to think, oh, every girl is an OnlyFans model, but that's just not true. That's just what you're seeing because our Explore page already shows us such a skewed percentage of women because they're already Instagram models. So of course they're going to have an OF link in their bio. Do you guys feel like it's hurt society?
I think it definitely, like the points that you're bringing up about the decreased barriers for a girl that wouldn't have normally gotten into the sex industry, and especially to the degree of like the actual porn industry. I think that is having an impact. So the fear is, right? So like even for parents is that potentially their daughter could get into something like this, even if they were raised a certain way, and because of the link with social media and how big that is growing, what I am seeing is the link between especially TikTok and OnlyFans, right? Is that barrier is so small. And I know I've seen it myself, like the very, very common comment that I would get early on, especially on my page, was OF ? Where's your OF or sneaky link? And, it's almost like people were assuming that would be something that every girl does, that starts getting good views on TikTok. So I think that can be somewhat destructive, because even me having that comment given to me, I'm thinking, really? Like, I'm talking about stuff that, like, I care about, and, like, that's the assumption made. Yeah. That's what I don't like.
Do you feel similarly if they ask, what's your Instagram? Like, isn't it kind of the same intentions to a certain degree?
So that's what's interesting because, like, maybe it's just my generation with Instagram, but, like, my Instagram page is essentially my TikTok page. Like everything that I have is reels, and then sometimes I'll just do like essentially selfies, so it's not revealing at all. But I can see how, like, maybe for the younger generation, there's an assumption there that it would be somewhat revealing, or that they would gain access to DMs and be able to contact directly. Yeah,
that makes sense. I can see how it's frustrating because I'm assuming, not doing any sexual type of content or anything. For me, I get more questions like that because I also tend to show my cleavage on camera, so maybe it seems a bit slightly more warranted, so I can see why that'd be frustrating for you. I guess the way I see it is they're asking because they think there's a chance, but even if they didn't ask, it's very likely that they'd be checking your Instagram anyway, or guys always comment on my TikTok and say Twitter, and essentially what they're looking for isn't whether I have like witty political tweets. It's because Twitter, you know what I mean, allows porn and stuff, so they're trying to see if I have that type of content. But you're saying it's like the OnlyFans question specifically that bothers you more than even if they asked for Twitter.
Right. And I'm not really on Twitter.
Okay.
So I guess I didn't really even know that. To be honest, I didn't know that Twitter allowed that kind of content.
Yeah. They allow everything, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Is that new since?
I don't know. I'm not on Twitter. I just know a lot of OF girls use it to promote themselves, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I agree with you as far as I don't think it's a gigantic pivot from porn in general. You know, I've always kind of thought it was odd as far as why a man would pay to see a woman, you know, naked or even performing sexual acts when he can get it for free everywhere. So I don't think that it's, and I also agree with you that, you know, a lot more women have access to that. And what I heard you say is that if they weren't be doing that, they would probably be doing like cam work or maybe even being a stripper or something, potentially. So I think, and we've actually discussed this on an episode, I think that a lot of women who were like in your generation might have gone into the kind of strip club industry are not doing that because they're going on OnlyFans.
Which is a net positive, right? At least in terms of safety and probably earnings.
Yeah, for safety, for sure. Yeah, I think it would be a net positive for the women. For the guys, not so much.
You think so?
Yeah, because for example, I have a very close friend that is involved in that culture. It's never been my thing, but he's actually gotten real relationships from that. You know, so essentially.
Wait, what do you mean? From going to the strip club?
Yeah, from going to the strip club. As far as, you know, he's gone there for years. So when he walks in the door, everybody knows his name. And so he has a certain level of trust, and he's had a couple of relationships that have come out of that, where if it was OnlyFans, for example, there's that gigantic barrier that would never happen.
Yeah. Would you say that's an outlying situation? Because I've never heard of a guy dating a stripper who they met at the club.
It's probably an outlier situation, but I think you'd be surprised. I think there's a lot of guys that in the past, I don't think it's happening as much now, that was their outlet, and they were able to, if it either was short-term stuff, more casual, or longer term, or even just like with this guy, for example, like he knows two of them right now that he's just friends with. Yeah. And so for him, it was a place to go, because he wasn't doing well on the dating apps, for example. And so he was able to talk to women and interact with them in a way that he wouldn't be able to in any other environment. And that was something that kind of solved some of those wounds as far as loneliness.
That's true. I wouldn't say that doesn't map onto OnlyFans experiences as well. Like, I see men in my DMs who tell me that it helps ameliorate their sense of loneliness as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only difference is that, just like with the world in general right now, is that having a face-to-face conversation and being in their presence is a lot different of an experience than, you know, a DM. That's kind of where I would see that it's kind of hurt men. On one hand, it's hurt men, but on the other hand, for example, let's say strip club culture ends up going away, which I think probably will, to be honest with you, at some point, then, you know, that would force men to do more cold approaches, for example, and meet women in the real world, you know, that way versus, you know, because I think these online relationships, they're like titrated doses of what we really are looking for as humans. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I just hesitate to think that a stripper and client interaction comes close at all to a real relationship or a healthy interaction, because the amount of dollars he probably spent, or the average guy spends, in hopes of maybe one of those strippers even becoming just a friend is so large to none that it just doesn't seem, I don't know, beneficial. And it's also like, it's not a real face-to-face interaction. You're interacting with a performer. They have a mask on. Like, yeah, sure, maybe 2 of those girls actually liked him as a person. Like, most of my friends who are strippers come home like crying because they're traumatized that they were assaulted, harassed. So it's like that guy is also learning unhealthy sexual and dating habits because he gets to finger the stripper without her permission and she can't really say anything. So I would say even maybe the guy goes home and he feels like he has more pep in his step because he's like, wow, I have like so much charisma. That stripper was really into me. The effect he's going to have on society because of that false sense of confidence is actually negative.
That's a really good point that I didn't even think of, because we have talked about this before, and that it's not really a good setup for a guy to go on OnlyFans because he may not even be getting a direct communication with that girl.
Yeah.
You know, like you might be communicating with her manager or, you know, just another man somewhere else pretending to be her. But it's true that when you go to the strip club, it is a similar thing in that it's not really her. It's a facade, most likely, that she is putting out.
Yeah.
And then that is teaching him bad habits, potentially.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's why I agreed with you as far as an outlier, because I think the missing component is that I think what's happening with a lot of these women is that they're lonely as well, and then they end up connecting with someone, and it maybe starts off with financial, but then it gets to the point where they realize that, you know, I actually, you know, like enjoy this guy's company, and essentially they could be kind of friend zoned by him, but some guys are okay with that. They'd rather be friend zoned than have nothing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's just hard for me to believe that that's a commonplace experience at all. I have so many stripper friends because of my experience in OnlyFans, and they just come home so disgusted. So I don't know. It's hard for me to fathom the idea of a woman wanting to be friends with one of her clients. Maybe 1 out of a million, but nowhere near close enough to where it's worth guys using that as an outlet to try and make friends, right?
So do you think that, you know, maybe we can broaden this out even a little bit more. Do you think that there's a big swath of men that would be a danger to women, and that, you know, men are malicious, you know, kind of in general, depending on the environment?
Can we make it more specific, the question?
Well, yeah, I mean, so you said, you know, kind of your stripper friends, they've kind of had pretty similar experiences. You know, you even used the word trauma. And so do you think that when it comes to the way that men and women interact nowadays, do you think that men have a lot of malice as far as, you know, kind of their approach?
Well, when we're talking about strip clubs and clients, it's already a sliver of the male population, because you're talking about men who are already single. They're already kind of striking out in...
Not necessarily. A lot of them are married.
Okay, well, maybe have some issues where maybe their wife doesn't know about. They have infidelity issues. Maybe they have some selfishness, whatever. If they're doing that, and if they already are, you know, positive for traits of selfishness and infidelity and those things, then clearly they lack maybe empathy for their wife or their girlfriend. So clearly that lack of empathy is also going to translate when they go to the strip club. So that doesn't necessarily mean the general male population could be malicious if 99% of clients at a strip club are malicious, I guess is my point.
Okay. And so that's your take, is about 99% of guys at strip clubs are malicious?
No, I'm saying even if most guys who go to strip clubs are malicious, that still doesn't speak to the general population, I think. Okay.
Yeah, see, I would disagree. I would honestly say that most guys who go to strip clubs are lonely. Because, you know, for example, my friend who will talk about that, he will see guys there who will just pay a lot of money literally to sit at the bar and talk with a woman, because he doesn't have any other connections. And that will be it. There'll be nothing sexual going on. There'll be no, you know, lap dances, backroom type of thing. And guys will just like dole out their money, you know, to do this. And he said, you know, that's more common, especially around, you know, about the older guys. So I think it really depends as well what setting it's in. Because, you know, if you're in Vegas, the strip club setting is very different than where we live.
Right. But is it actually this innocuous sense of loneliness? Because if most of these men are married, they have access to a woman who's consented to now being your emotional outlet. So how lonely are you if you're married and you're voluntarily choosing to go to a strip club? That shows me it's not just this innocent thing of, oh, I just want to talk to a woman, because it's like you have that at home. You're clearly seeking something more, right?
Sometimes. I think that it's also guys that are in dead bedrooms. And I think that that's very common. Also, that couples have stayed together because they're raising the kids. I'm not saying it's healthy to do that, but it's not taking place in a vacuum. I really don't believe that guys are saying, I've got this great wife at home and I want to go talk to this stripper. I think there's a void there. And because of that void, they're trying to seek that elsewhere. I knew one guy, for example, this is a client of mine. So I didn't give you much of a background, but I'm a psychologist. So he his wife actually had severe illness. And because of that, he was her caretaker essentially. And so for him, there was no sexuality going on, and it was kind of an escape and somebody to talk to that he felt, and the connection was broken as well. So he really was staying in that marriage out of duty and obligation. And I think that happens. I think there's a lot of marriages that are broken, but the people are still together. And I know that because I've worked with them. And so
you could argue that they're lonely.
Yes.
Within the relationship.
Absolutely.
True, but if you're lonely in your relationship and you decide the way to solve that is to treat your loneliness at the strip club, you're just worsening your marriage. You're going to worsen you're going to just stretch out the gap you feel with your wife. That's why people are generally against polyamory.
I totally agree. I think that they're coping.
It's a cope for sure.
It's 100% coping, and it's actually not even going to long-term mitigate the effects of loneliness. Like same with dating apps. Like guys who spend above average time on dating apps who tend to be lonelier, and the more time they spend on dating apps, like amassing more rejection, the more ostracized they feel from people, the more bitter and like worse social skills they end up getting. So I would argue the same happens for guys who occasion the strip club a ton.
Yeah, I guess my whole point of that was not to encourage it or to say that it's healthy, but to recognize it is a cope, but it's a cope because there's reasons behind it that I don't really believe it's most of the time there's malicious intent, or there's the guys that are doing that because of the fact that they're not happy in their relationship with that woman, and they're being that's not their intent is they're saying again, I've got this great woman at home, but I want more. I don't think most guys.
But then why not just go to a therapist if you really want to talk? Like, you're already blowing all your money on a stripper. Like, do you really need to talk to someone who's naked in their underwear?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
I would say the female coworker.
Yeah, I would say that's the icing on the cake. But I would agree with you. I think most guys who are in situations like that would benefit from therapy, and that should be, and that's changing. But for the longest period of time, first of all, there's not a lot of female therapists. There's not a lot of male therapists out there. And so guys connect much better with other males. And also there's been a gigantic stigma for males going to therapy as well. So that's changing, thank goodness. But it's, taken a long time. And but so I would say, okay, so if you're saying like going to a strip club is unhealthy, then wouldn't going to an OnlyFans be unhealthy as well?
I don't think going on OnlyFans is a healthy habit, yeah.
Okay.
If you struggle with loneliness, if you have like a crush on a certain celebrity or TikToker, and you know what I mean, you're just seeking them out. But if you're spending hours a day on OnlyFans and think that substitutes like a relationship or friendship, then I think that's a really bad habit. For sure. Yeah.
Well, and I would agree that when it comes to porn, when it comes to strip clubs, same type of dynamic that's going on. I think they're all kind of intertwined. I think OnlyFans is just kind of the newest iteration of that. And so that's why it was so surprising, honestly, Farha, that you're on OnlyFans, because when I watched your clips, you're an extremely bright woman, and you have really good takes, and you're able to talk about kind of the female perspective, in a way that really makes sense, and I think a lot of men can learn from. But then on the other hand, I think I sent you that text as well, is that you're on there, which is kind of a contradiction. Maybe at least that's how I perceive it. I could be incorrect. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Can we break down like why exactly you see it as a contradiction?
Sure. I think it's a contradiction because on one hand, you talk about unhealthy dynamics between men and women. And so, for example, like how much malice potentially men have towards women. But then you're putting yourself on a platform which is almost kind of inviting that. And you've even, said early in this talk that was something that you do get regularly. So I'm wondering, why put yourself in a position to be sexualized when you have so much more to offer?
I actually find it very congruent with like my TikTok takes and everything for a few reasons. The first is that it's not necessarily that I find OnlyFans or porn nefarious in themselves. I more talk about asymmetry in dating conventions. So I say that if a guy in a relationship is able to watch porn and consume porn and still be considered monogamous, then I think the symmetry of that would be a girl in a relationship should be considered monogamous even if she has an OnlyFans alongside her boyfriend. The second thing is that I'm a strong believer that women are going to be sexualized regardless. I know that's one of the topics you wanted to talk about was like dressing provocatively. So I don't know if we should pivot yet into that. But even when I started my TikTok and I was doing comedy videos, I made a point to myself to never show any cleavage. And I actually even never showed my face. Like I wear these giant heart-shaped sunglasses and I was still sexualized. Same way you're saying, you still get comments that are like OnlyFans, even though you seem to dress conservatively and only talk about traditional topics maybe, or at least from a traditional lens. So no matter what you do, you're always going to be sexualized. Even when I wear a shirt like this, I'm sexualized, even though I'm not showing cleavage. Even when I wore baggy t-shirts with sunglasses, people told me I had a following because I was hot and things like that. And it's like people are always going to discredit you because of how you look for being a woman. If they find you sexually arousing, like that's their internal feeling of sexual arousal. And then because they are sexually aroused by you, they're going to assume that you have some decision in being sexually arousing, if that makes sense. So I figured, why even pride myself on the fact that I'm going out of my way to not do it if they're going to be fapping regardless, I guess is my point. And I guess my whole project with like TikTok and OnlyFans and Instagram is to kind of show that like the separation. Have you guys heard of like the Madonna whore complex?
I've heard of it. I'm not sure how you're referring to it in this specific matter.
The idea is that like guys mentally sometimes categorize women as women they'd want to date and then women they'd want to fuck. And the women they'd want to date, they tend to not be able to sexualize, which is strange. So you'll see men on TikTok being like, have you ever liked a woman so much that you don't even want to have sex with her? And it's just so strange because dating is like the union of emotional and sexual intimacy. So that's why I don't see me doing OnlyFans as incongruent with any of my talking points, because the whole point is like every person's inherently sexual and every person also is capable of emotional and intellectual pursuits as well, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying with that. And we have talked about that, where guys will look at a girl one way or the other. I will speak to
There's
personal.
a third category too.
Yeah, there's
never in a
the
million
never in a
years.
million years. There's just the straight up no category. I'll say from personal experience on my TikTok page, because I said how, guys early on were making the OF comments. That was definitely before like my name was really out there and people knew me for what I believed in and what my values were. And I could say I have not had like an OF question in probably a year. And so I think that it does take time. I think that you're right in that like once a guy gets to know a woman, I think that that can be a very different thing in how they look at her versus just seeing a small 30-second thing of her, speaking or even just dancing. And the tendency might be to sexualize her no matter what she's wearing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think still like certain provocative clothing is going to send a message.
Right. So I guess we could get into that topic now. We could talk about what it means to be provocative. So what would you categorize as provocative clothing?
I think it depends on the culture that you live in.
Right.
Obviously. So in the culture that we live in, I think even within the culture that we live in, people would have different perspectives on it, because I think that where we live is very different than like LA would be. I think that if you walked around here where we live with a bikini top and just jean shorts, that would be considered provocative.
Right.
If you did that in LA, and of course, depending on location, if you're near a beach, like that wouldn't be seen as provocative.
Right. So if it's locationally contingent, and then now we're having all these experiences fly into TikTok and the internet, what is the convention of provocative or modest clothing? Because they don't know that you live in Rochester and I live in LA.
Right, that's true.
So how do I not invite sexual comments on TikTok? Like, what would be the outfit, or like what would be the limit?
I think that it really depends on what you normally wear in the outside world. Like, of course, people can make judgments on you, but if like what you wear on your TikToks is what you would wear to the grocery store, I think like internally you know that you're not sending that provocative message. And if they receive it that way, then it's sort of their problem. But if you personally, if that is not the message that you're sending, because that's just what you're comfortable in, I think that you could stand by the argument that you're not dressing provocatively.
Okay, so then if I dress provocatively in my everyday life and then dress equally as provocatively online, it's not provocative because it's congruent with how I dress offline?
Yeah, unless you're truly, like, if you personally are saying to yourself, I'm trying to be provocative in every way in my day-to-day life. But I don't think that's anybody. I don't think anybody is going through their day-to-day life constantly trying to attract that type of attention.
Probably, but would you agree that guys, even if a girl is wearing like just a tight t-shirt and she has big tits, guys will find that provocative?
I think that they'll find it attractive, potentially. I don't think it necessarily means that they'll find it provocative.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I agree with you that I think it's completely relative, like what culture you're in, what location you're in. And the way I see it is, I had this argument with like Myron Gaines on Fresh and Fit, because he was saying that there's a difference between dressing provocatively and enhancing your natural beauty. Because I had pointed out that there are some guys who don't even want their girlfriends wearing makeup in a relationship because they think that's them deliberately trying to provoke men into finding them attractive. And I would argue that there actually isn't a clear distinction between enhancing your natural beauty and dressing provocatively. Because if the idea of dressing provocatively is that you're deliberately trying to trigger sexual arousal, then so many of our norms around grooming are centered around that too as well. So for instance, guys will say that they like girls with big tits because it signals to them that they're fertile and they'll make good mothers, right? And then also girls with big lips, that's like another standard of fertility. They're both secondary sex characteristics. So then by that logic, like wearing lip gloss trying to make your lips look more plump and kissable is equally as provocative as showing your tits. And likewise, men are also more attracted to younger women because they're more fertile. So then by that logic, you know, dyeing your gray hairs to the color they used to be is being sexually provocative because you're trying to get men to see you as more fertile, or like smoothing out your eye bags or wrinkles or things like that. So that's why it's hard for me to see a clear distinction between provocativeness and just beauty standards, if that makes sense. Do you feel that way?
I can see that. Yeah, that there's that kind of, they're interwoven, and it's hard to separate that out.
Yeah.
I think that what makes the difference is the intent. Right. So like if a woman is like never wearing makeup other than when she's going out to the club, like what do you think is her intent?
But women put on makeup anytime they leave the house though.
I would say some. Yeah. Well, let's say the gym, right? Because I feel like that's a more clear, distinct example. So some women will wear makeup to the gym. Many won't. And I think that this also depends on where you live, because I would say where we live, the majority of women do not wear makeup to the gym. I do not wear makeup to the gym.
Unless they're very young, I would say that.
Okay.
That's probably a difference.
That's what you've seen.
But yeah, but it's kind of that in high school they don't, but it's like kind of that college post, almost kind of your age group. Honestly, that's where you start to see the difference, I think.
Let's make this a clear example. Let's say a woman that is wearing makeup at the gym, but she is not wearing makeup like to the grocery store. What do you think her intent is?
I think wanting to look good at a certain place is not the same as wanting to provoke sexual attention. So if my friend invites me to go to her birthday party and I put on makeup, that doesn't necessarily mean it's because I want guys there to hit on me. It's because I just want to look good for looking good, right? So I could still want to look good at the gym. That's why there's a whole industry around like attractive leggings, not just in terms of like butt padding, but just in terms of like fashion styles and colors that are flattering, right? Versus to the grocery store, I could just wear like a bathrobe.
Yeah, I can see that. It just, I guess, if you're making a different decision on what exactly you are wearing, like, so you could use the example of going to the gym without those leggings versus going to some sort of like marathon race with them. And let's say at the gym, you go to an all women's gym. Like, I just feel like that is pretty clear intent. that why are you making that change of you're literally doing the same activity, but you know the environment around you is going to be different. And so I think for women that make a decision based off of that and based off of the environment that's around them, you know, that might be a signal to the intent being that she is trying to put out that sexuality, which I don't think is a wrong thing. Like, I think that for a woman that is single, that is like going out to the nightclub, like obviously she's going to go all out and she's going to want to attract, you know, that sexuality.
Right. It's hard for me to see it that way, because if your argument is that when women change their appearance, it's with the intention of attracting sexual desire in the other sex, then why is it that so many women then complain about being hit on in the gym? If you're pretty much positing that it's in their control whether they get hit on or not, so then if that were the case, women wouldn't be creating such an uproar that they're being harassed all the time in places and in environments where they don't want to be harassed, right?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's foolproof. Yeah, you can jump in.
Let me chip in here just because for that specific, I think that women want the attention from certain males, but from others, they don't. And that's where the disparity is.
But then they wouldn't make the blanket rule, don't hit on me at the gym.
I don't know. I don't know if they're being honest. I think that if the right guy hit on them at the gym, they would feel differently about that.
I don't think that's the case. I feel like you guys are forgetting that women have all the sexual leverage. Like, if they wanted to hook up with someone, they easily could. Like, they're not like men. They don't need to have every decision be about, like, increasing their riz and stuff like that. I don't know.
But that's why I think
women don't approach either. So they have to make themselves attractive. And I think with the right guys, if it was, let's say, a normie woman and she was, you know, dressing very provocatively in the gym, and there was a Chad guy that she had a crush on, if he went up to her, I don't think she'd have a problem with it if she was single. Even if she wasn't, I think she would just honestly get ego boost from that. But if it's, you know, the creepy old guy, then you're going to have a different scenario. And that's why we're seeing like all these gym videos. It's, you know, and the reality is that I just saw a Pew study that 80% of men are not approaching women at all because of fear of being called a creep.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably environments where it's more appropriate than others to approach women. I think the idea that women only consider it sexual harassment based on how the guys look is just like a chronically online talking point I see a lot. Like, I don't know if there's any truth to that. Like, I don't hear women ever tell me like, oh, this really hot guy hit on me at the gym. It's always like, oh, this guy hit on me at the gym. So wouldn't we hear at least some of the success stories about like, oh, I met this guy at the gym, he was really hot? Because I'm not hearing those. Are you guys?
Well, I've actually seen TikToks of women shooting their shot with guys at the gym and kind of getting turned down. And so I think that there's women who want to get approached, but again, I really believe it depends on if they're attracted to him or not.
Yeah, I think that we're probably not hearing many of those stories because there's not many men that they are attracted to that are also then being the ones that are approaching.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, what was the stat we always use from the OkCupid?
For how many women are actually finding men to be attractive?
Yes.
The 20%?
Yeah, 20%.
Yeah, 20%.
It's very low. So that combined with they happen to be at the same gym and they decide to actually approach her. Like, the more likely scenario is that he is unattractive in her eyes. So he's the one that's approaching her. And then, you know, the guy gets labeled a creep because of that.
Right. Okay, so you're saying if the girl wears a certain type of leggings at the gym that she wouldn't wear at a marathon or running with her friends, that means she's inviting the attention. But how would the guys at the gym know that? Like, if you're saying it's an internal experience based off what she would normally wear, how does that translate onto like the guy's engagement with her?
Right. So that's what's like nearly impossible for the guy to be able to tell, right? Unless he knows her more than just in that one situation. So I think like on social media, that can be a little bit different. And that's probably more of what I was referring to, because obviously if it's somebody on your social media page, you're posting like quite frequently and you'll show yourself in different scenarios, you know, so that guys kind of get a read on you. But if you're not showing yourself, I guess, in all aspects, and you are just showing yourself in that one way and sexualizing yourself, like, I think then you're inviting him to believe that that is just you and who you are.
Sure. I mean, everyone's sexual, like 100%. I have an OnlyFans. Go into my OnlyFans, sext me, like hit on me if you want. Don't be mean or aggressive or say anything threatening. But like, if you want to sext me there, go for it. Like, that's the nature of OnlyFans. Same way if you're in a relationship or dating someone, like, you know, you guys can hook up in the bedroom. That doesn't necessarily mean that's consent to just like fuck someone in another space, right? So I guess I'm not understanding like why we're categorizing women as like, these women are just like kind of slutty, or more like it's more warranted to objectify them because they have an OnlyFans, when really what the OnlyFans is saying is it's okay to talk to me in that certain tone on my OnlyFans. Why does that need to translate onto my TikTok or anything like that, right?
So what you're saying is if they're talking to you in a certain way on your OnlyFans, like, you don't think that they should be speaking to you that way on TikTok or other channels?
I mean, it's their prerogative to do what they want. I'm just saying that.
Or is there a marked difference that you see as far as comments?
Yeah, I mean, my TikTok isn't thirst traps or anything, so I would say I generally don't get that problem, to be honest. Most of the comments are just fighting about like the content of what I'm saying.
Or Instagram, I should say, probably.
Yeah, I guess my point is, like, I see our contention right now is you guys are saying if a girl has an OnlyFans or presents herself in a certain way, then that's an invitation to just, like, blanket sexualize her as a person. But my point is, like, every single person is sexual, whether they're doing it on OnlyFans or they're going home to their husband and doing it. Like, it's not like half the population's asexual and the other population are whores. So my point is that, like, there are certain spaces in which maybe a woman invites that intention, and I think OnlyFans is definitely one of those spaces. It allows that space, and it also allows women to monetize off that space, right? So I guess that's why I see it as healthy as well.
Can we back up a little bit, though? Because there's one definite point I don't know how Emily will feel about it, but when you said that men going on porn is the same as a woman being on OnlyFans, I think it's completely different, because it's not that man versus it is that woman who's showing that content. So it's a man looking at other women. That's one thing. And you could say that potentially that could be cheating, however you want to say it. But there is a different level, because it's you. So if you were in a relationship, for example, then that guy has to deal with the fact that, you know, I know your content is non-nude, let alone, you know, hardcore porn, but it's something where if you think about it from a man's perspective, if he was dating somebody who went to those types of levels, how that could affect him versus the effect that it would have on the woman by him just viewing porn.
What are the actual material differences in the effect? If my boyfriend watches porn, you know, porn is tied to the fact that relationships do have adverse outcomes, right? So what's the actual difference? Yes, one's watching, one's performing, but what do you think the equivalent is then of a man watching porn in the relationship? The woman also watching porn?
Yeah, I'd say so.
I just don't think that's true. Like, sex work is $1 billion industry because of men. As much as we want to say, like, oh, well, my girlfriend could go to the strip club too. My woman could watch porn too. We know that that's not who's profiting off this. We know that, like, this content is not designed and marketable because of a female audience. So it feels kind of bad faith to just say, like, oh, well, whatever I enjoy, my girlfriend could also do. It's like if, you know, guys prefer sports. Oh, my girlfriend's not allowed to watch whatever shows she wants, but she's allowed to watch sports. It's like, okay, cool, but is that going to satisfy her the way it satisfies you? I don't think so. I think the symmetry of the gratification men get from consuming porn, maybe women get that from maybe garnering attention, having people look at them, maybe being a bit exhibitionist. So that's why I see it as more symmetrical.
Well, there's also the money part.
Right, and if anything, I would say that morally justifies it more because she's not seeking maybe sexual gratification. It's a job, right? Doesn't that mean there's a higher level of dissociation than the guy who's jacking off to Lana Rhoades every night?
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's apples and oranges, to be honest. I think it's too far apart.
I think one day it won't be seen that way. I think it's finally that, you know, women are maybe having their comeuppance in relationships, and guys are finally seeing what it's like to be a bit jealous. That women have kind of just had to have baked into them of, oh yeah, my boyfriend is constantly lusting and yearning after other women, constantly DMing other Instagram models. His Explore page is full of porn, but that's okay because he's coming home to me. And now the guy maybe has to swallow that pill as well of other guys are fiending for her, but she's coming home to me.
Yeah, I don't think like that first scenario is healthy anyways. You know, if the man is consuming a bunch of porn and, you know, liking Instagram models pages or trying to DM them and he's in a relationship, like that's obviously not good for the relationship. But I feel like what women do a lot of times is like they up the ante and they like go to the extreme. So like, where's the stopping point? I mean, where do you stop where, okay, if she's performing, what if she actually has sex and she's actually performing porn? Like, is that really even keel with him liking Instagram photos of half naked women?
Not necessarily, but now we have, again, like the $1 billion sex industry. Like, I've talked to guys who literally have Oculus and they can now pretend that a girl's actually giving them head while they're jacking off and they can visually see that, right? Oh. So isn't that also them upping the ante? But I'm saying there's never any parameters or sanctioning on that, but it's always when women are now doing it, suddenly we're always questioning, oh, well, how does this affect their partners?
Yeah, well, gosh, I think that's wrong too. You know, if he's actually
the VR porn.
Yeah, and I think like most girls should have a problem with that if that's your boyfriend. But I think it's still the same goes for the man having issues with her being on OnlyFans. Like, I think that that's justifiable. I guess there could be relationships out there, you know, just like how there's open relationships where they're really two people that are both participating in those things and they're open with each other about it and like they're okay and it works for them. I just don't think that it'll work for the majority of people out there.
Right. And I don't think porn necessarily works for a lot of relationships either. I think it also destroys it. I guess my point, like I said, is just about the symmetry and the level. So I think it is 100% your prerogative as a woman to say, I don't want my boyfriend watching porn. And then conversely, it'd be his prerogative to say, okay, I don't want you maybe going on OnlyFans either. But I think if you are a guy and you feel like there's no sanctioning on how much porn you can watch, what level, whether you're using VR porn and stuff like that, then I don't think you're in a position to be telling your girlfriend to not sell lewds. At least that's my take.
Yeah. I don't know. I still don't think they're on the same level. Well, like what you were saying.
Well, how about just, you know, I'm wondering though, because again, you seem very level-headed and you make really good arguments. So I'm wondering for you personally, if you wouldn't mind disclosing this, you know, if you feel like, you know, porn is unhealthy for women and for men, I would assume, then why participate at all?
I guess because of that symmetry, I don't think necessarily boycotting a thing is going to change the industry. Same way you could be a socialist in a capitalist society, you're still going to have an iPhone, right? So I think our culture is already incredibly sexed against women, and I think you can monetize off it. Like I said, guys, if you even click my Instagram and I have a feature where you view insights, you see how many bookmarks I'm getting. My posts have like up to an 80% bookmark ratio, which pretty much implies guys are already saving my post and jacking off to it. And that's not even me being that provocative, right? So it's like if guys are already going to be jacking off to us, why not monetize it, right? And it's like if guys are already going to have porn addictions, why not monetize off it, right?
I don't know. That'd be kind of the drug dealers, you know, backwards rationalization, I would say.
I just don't see why the onus is always put on the OnlyFans girls. Like, I feel like...
Oh, no, we put the onus on guys, too. We tell guys, you should not simp at all, because I think it's very harmful to men.
Just simp for OnlyFans girls, or are you also telling guys to not get on Pornhub?
No, I don't.
Because I only ever see it about don't spend money on her. She's not worth it. That's where I see a lot of these red pillars come into play. They're not necessarily telling guys to stop watching porn. That's why it feels sometimes like bad faith advice.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, no, I would say that porn is a net negative for sure for everyone.
Yeah, but can you see why, from my point of view, it seems like bad faith? Because it felt like nobody was talking about the adverse effects of porn besides radfems, and now OnlyFans is coming and girls are finally making money off it, and that's why it feels like guys only care because they're pissed, because they're like, well, I can't make this money doing it. Girls can make 7 figures not even lifting a finger. So it feels less about the effects on society and more about the fact that they just feel like it's financially unfair.
I don't know. As a man, I've never thought about it that way. I always thought about it like I wouldn't want my sister to do it, or, you know, somebody I was dating, because I wouldn't want, you know, friendships or whatever. You know, that's to me very personal material, and I wouldn't want them to see that, and because that would be an embarrassment for me.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, especially with the red pillars. Like, I think that they do kind of portray that their issue is with women just making money off of it, which seems kind of backwards. But I think for the majority of men that are actually out there, like they have a problem with it because of like what you just said, Todd, that it's seen as more of like you're spoiling the dating market potentially because more and more women are getting into it and making money this way. And so what are their chances of actually finding a woman that is not doing it?
And I guess this is also another point of contention because in my head, it's like, okay, it's harder now to find a woman who hasn't done OnlyFans. It's also hard to find a guy whose brain isn't now broken from porn addictions, right? But that's never seen because there's no digital footprint for that. So we think like, oh, he has a clean slate. But this woman, if she's posted her body, she's now undateable. And it's like, why are we the ones who, you know what I mean, rack up this negative track record where they're always scotch-free, you know?
Yeah, I can see that. Like, there's no clear evidence for the guy that he's done that.
He could have spent like tens of thousands of dollars paying for custom porn, deepfake porn, OnlyFans porn, and it's like that never affects his dateability. But for us, if we even, you know what I mean, wear a bikini on Instagram, suddenly, again, we fall into that horror category of the Madonna whore complex, and that's what irks me.
Yeah. I think that would come out eventually in that man. I mean, like, he would be considered, especially by a very conservative woman, to be undateable.
Possibly, but that's more of a radical subsection of women versus I think the average man would probably be disgusted dating an OnlyFans woman, right? With a conservative woman, it's valid because she wants a man who matches her values.
Right.
But it's usually these men who are literally worshiping Myron Gaines, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to fuck 50 women before I get married who want a girl with a low body count who doesn't do OnlyFans.
Yeah, I think that's
stuff.
backwards.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wouldn't consider ourselves red pillars anyways.
We'll be really interested to see, you know, our viewers and the comments that they have.
They're going to roast me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, you'll have to read through them.